Right. To give a brief synopsis of how I even got into this, in 2002 I started a 2-year mission for my church in Ukraine. While I was over there, I became fluent in the language, the culture, the people. About 2005, Fresno State started a brand new program, undergraduate program for biomedical physics. And I decided to take a few of those courses. I was a physics major at the time and really enjoyed it, so I decided to go into that. And our one instructor actually, in the summer of 2006, went to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he started working on making a documentary about just kind of the research that's gone on in the wake of the bombs. And he was told there that he was the first person ever to do something of that nature. And so when I found out about that, I thought, well, surely nobody's done anything of that nature for Chernobyl, if they haven't done it for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And since I already know the language and the culture, it'd be pretty easy for me to be able to go over there and do something of that nature. So I made some calls, and as I looked through all the research that had been published, I consistently saw that the Research Center for Radiation Medicine was on almost every publication. So I made some contacts there, and I was able to go over there in the summer of 2007 and have an internship of sorts with them, and also they let me go all over their facilities and take some footage to put together this documentary. Today I'm just going to kind of go over more of what I've learned thus far from the documentary. It's still in the video editing stage and will be for the foreseeable future. So I just put this on here. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with how nuclear reactors work, but I was going to start out talking about the Chernobyl accident itself and what we now know in terms of the details of what made the accident occur. So those not familiar, it's just sort of a general reactor design. You have fuel rods in the reactor itself. You have control rods that can be lowered in and out, which will absorb the neutrons to either speed up or slow down the rate of reaction. You have a moderator in there to slow down the neutrons so that they're more likely to react with fuel rods. And you have a pump that will pump water through here that will carry away the heat into this other water tank, which will generate steam. The steam turns the turbine, which turns the generator, which produces the electricity. That's your just general basic design. It varies from different designs. We'll use different substances for the moderators, for whether or not the water is pressurized here inside the reactor. But this is just the general design of the reactor. What led to the Chernobyl accident? Actually, a combination.
Pressurized in the reactor, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just they'll use different levels of pressure and all that sort of thing. First off, what have you heard about what happened with the Chernobyl accident? What have you heard that was the cause of the disaster?
The reactivity accident ran away because there was a test being done, and
They shut off some of the
set off, and had no containment.
Yeah, it was a combination of both the reactor design itself. There were lots of flaws in the design, things that could have been changed that would have made the difference. And also, it was a user error. What actually kind of led up to it, they realized there were some issues with their design of reactor, and they performed some tests on what would happen in low power situations in case they didn't have enough power to power these pumps that are pumping the water. And they found this on a couple other reactors in that same facility, that they had issues with those when they tested them. They'd done the tests, they completed them, but the tests still came back with bad results, that they needed to make some improvements. So they made improvements to the generator system that would kick in to continue to power the pumps in case of power failure. And they were already scheduled to shut down Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl power plant anyhow on that particular day, April 25th. And they had been running running that particular reactor for a little over a year nonstop, so it was time to shut it down anyway. Clean out the fuel rods, put in new ones. And so they scheduled this test. They said, all right, we'll test the adjustments that we've made to the system to see how well it works. Well, it just so happened that as they were powering down, they had to slowly power down the nuclear reactor, because if you slow it down too quickly, then you get excess daughter products that adversely affect the way it functions. So you really have to take it down slowly. So they were taking it down slowly. They had it down to about 50% of its normal output. And then they had a major electricity failure at a major power plant in Kiev. And a lot of the main people who normally worked at this reactor were called over there to help out with getting that power plant back up and running. And so they went ahead and canceled the test. Well, the night crew came in, and apparently that memo didn't get passed on. So the night crew came in assuming that the test was supposed to continue. Now the day crew had already kind of stopped the power down process. They had gone down to 50%, and they went ahead and stopped that because they were going to need this excess power since the other power plant went down. So they'd stopped the power down process. So when the night crew got there and they saw they still had to do the test, they went ahead and started the power down process some more in order to do the test that they could do originally on the schedule. The people who came in for the night crew, none of them had actually been particularly trained on this design of nuclear reactor. In fact, most of them just worked in general power plants, but not nuclear powered. And only one of the people there actually had worked on a nuclear sub. So they came in and they were ignorant to a lot of the little nuances with how the power plant and how the power down should have been performed. So they turned the power down a lot faster than they should have. And one of the effects of that is there was an excess production of xenon-135. Normally, they try to keep the decay rate of xenon-135 and its production rate in the reactor about constant, which is one of the reasons why they need to power down and power up slowly.
What's the half-life of xenon-135?
I don't know that off
A
the
few
top of my
hours
head.
or something?
Yeah, it's not long.
A few days, I think.
Days?
Is it days? In any case, it's certainly not one of them that is on the order of years. It's really short, days or hours, something like that. So as they were powering it down faster, it produced an excess of xenon-135, and it also would act as a neutron absorber. Well, not an absorber; it would act as a moderator. It would slow down the neutrons, which was increasing the reactivity. And so they were like, "Oh man, this is bad. It's not going down as much as we want." So I'm sorry. It was actually. I'm confused. It did actually act as an absorber, the xenon-135. So it was slowing down the reaction beyond what they anticipated. So the power level dropped really low. And so they said, "Oh well, the power's going too low. We better pull out some of the control rods." So they pulled out the control rods even further, while the xenon-135 artificially acted in place of the control rods. Then what happened is, as the pumps were slowing down and waiting for the generators to kick in, steam started accumulating within the reactor core. Now, a good reactor design will usually have a negative void, where the water is the main moderator, and so as steam bubbles form, there's less water within that same volume to act as a moderator, so less neutrons are slowed down, you have less reactivity, and the reaction will slow down with the negative void. This design of reactor that they had at Chernobyl used graphite as a moderator, and so the water didn't really matter in terms of speeding up or slowing down the reaction. And in fact, with the steam occurring and excess heat around the reactor itself, the increased heat actually increased the reaction. So they saw, again, increased reaction rate, so they pulled the control rods out even more. They had the control rods entirely out because the reaction was going so low, and they had all these artificial stops, the xenon and the steam that was accumulating. Well, when it got to that point, they realized, oh no, this is not going well. So as the levels were getting way too high and it was starting to run away, they tried to start lowering the control rods back in to the reactor.